For thousands of years, the Dominion ruled the stars without fear. Their fleets moved like storms, darkening skies of entire worlds. Wherever their banners appeared, resistance ended before it could begin. The galaxy had learned one truth: no one could challenge the Dominion and live. Admiral Carrack stood at the bridge of the Dominion flagship, Vakon's Wrath. From its vast viewing deck, he watched the burning of another rebel colony below. Explosions rippled across the planet's surface like glowing veins. Cities turned to ash. Civilizations ended in silence. Carrack's silver eyes reflected the fire. To him, this was order. This was peace through domination. Status, he asked in a calm, cold tone. "Resistance has ceased, Admiral," replied Commander Drav, his voice trembling slightly. "The surface is secured. Only pockets remain underground." "Then bury them," Carrack said. "If they wish for darkness, give it to them." The Dominion believed themselves to be the highest form of evolution, perfect in mind, body, and weaponry. They conquered not because they had to, but because they believed no one else was worthy of the stars. All across the bridge, officers stood in disciplined silence. The hum of reactors echoed through the chamber like the breath of a sleeping beast. Carrack turned to the window again, watching the planet crumble under orbital fire. "Pathetic," he whispered. "These worlds always believe they can fight, yet they never understand that the Dominion is eternal." His fleet stretched across the system, hundreds of battleships, cruisers, and carriers forming an iron web of control. The Dominion emblem burned bright on every hull, a black sun devouring the light. But at that very moment, deep in the outer system, something stirred. A faint energy pulse appeared on the sensors of one outpost station orbiting a gas giant. At first, the technician thought it was a malfunction, a random gravitational spike. But when he zoomed in, his breath caught. "Unknown contact. Sector 9 Theta," he said. "Single object emerging from the void." The report reached the Vakon's Wrath within minutes. Carrack glanced at the display. The object was small, solitary, moving slowly, not matching any known Dominion design. "Pirates?" Drav suggested. Carrack smirked. "Let them come. Even insects crawl into the fire sometimes." But as the image cleared, the bridge fell silent. The ship that appeared did not resemble anything the Dominion had ever seen. It was dark, not painted but built from something that drank light. Its hull shimmered with shifting shadows, every line and edge designed for a purpose beyond comprehension. The Dominion scanners struggled to define it. "Unknown alloy composition. Energy output? Fluctuating," said the sensor officer. "It's not on any registry. Identify," Carrack ordered. After a pause, the communication console crackled. A deep human voice came through. Calm, unhurried, it carried the weight of something ancient. "This is Terran Battleship Leviathan," the voice said. "Dominion vessels, stand down." The bridge froze. For a long moment, no one spoke. Carrack's expression hardened. "Terran?" he repeated quietly. "Impossible. Humanity is gone. Their world burned centuries ago." Drav's voice shook. "Records say they destroyed themselves, Admiral." Carrack leaned forward, his silver eyes narrowing. "And yet here one stands before us." He studied the holographic image of the Leviathan as it approached, its engines burning with deep blue light that rippled like ocean waves. The ship moved with unnatural grace, ignoring gravitational drag, as if space itself parted for it. "Signal it again," Carrack ordered. "Demand identification code." They sent the signal. The answer was silence. Then another voice transmission arrived. "Calm and steady. You have attacked unarmed colonies. Withdraw or face response." Carrack's lips curved into a cruel smile. "Response? From one ship?" He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Send a message to all vessels. Prepare to engage. Show this ghost what the Dominion truly is." Engines flared. The Dominion fleet turned like a living creature, hundreds of ships aligning weapons. Their plasma cannons charged, painting the darkness with light. The Leviathan still drifted closer, slow, steady, fearless. Carrack raised his hand. "Fire!" Thousands of plasma bolts burst from Dominion cannons, crossing the void in blinding arcs. Space itself glowed white from the intensity. Every sensor screamed with overload. The blast struck the Leviathan and vanished, no explosion, no deflection. The energy simply disappeared against the Terran hull. "Impossible!" shouted Drav. "Direct hits across all vectors. No damage detected." Carex's jaw tightened. Again, more fire filled the stars. Waves of plasma, missiles, particle beams, all swallowed by the same darkness. The Leviathan continued its approach untouched. Then, for the first time in centuries, Admiral Carex felt something alien in his chest. Not anger, not rage, fear. He watched the dark ship grow larger in the viewing glass. His throat tightened as his mind tried to explain what he saw. Energy signatures far beyond Dominion science, weapons that hummed with unknown resonance. A presence that made even the air around him heavy. On the bridge, alarms began to sound. "Admiral, their weapon systems are active," an officer stammered. Carex turned sharply. "What kind?" "Unknown. Power levels. Off the scale." The voice from the Leviathan came again. "Final warning." "Cease fire." Carex clenched his fists. "Never." For a heartbeat, everything was silent. The stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. Then a single beam of light emerged from the Leviathan's forward gun. It wasn't bright. It was cold, like something cutting reality itself apart. The beam passed through one Dominion cruiser, and the ship was gone. Not destroyed, not broken, simply erased. Gasps filled the bridge. Carex stared, his pride cracking under the impossible. "Admiral," Drav whispered, "what are they?" Carex could not answer. His gaze locked on the dark Terran ship, now looming close enough for every scar and symbol to be visible. The ancient human emblem glowed faintly on its hull, blue and white, surrounded by stars. The Dominion fleet had faced thousands of enemies. None survived. But tonight, something older, stronger, and far more dangerous had entered the battlefield. The stars around the Dominion flickered as the Leviathan's shadow spread across them. Silent, unyielding, unstoppable, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the galaxy realized that the age of Dominion supremacy was ending, because humanity had returned. The silence, after the Dominion's first defeat, was heavier than any explosion. The wreck of the erased cruiser drifted as dust among the stars. No flame, no debris, no survivors, just nothing. It was as if the ship had never existed at all. Inside the Varkon's wrath, Admiral Carex stood frozen. The bridge crew looked at him for orders, but his mind struggled to form words. The Dominion had crushed countless empires, erased civilizations, and wiped entire species from existence. Yet now, one human ship had erased them. "Admiral," Commander Drav said softly, "the enemy vessel is holding position." "No further fire." Carex's lips tightened. "They are mocking us." Drav hesitated. "Sir, the power we detected—" "I said they are mocking us." Carex's voice broke the stillness like thunder. "We are the Dominion. Prepare a full assault. Every gun, every missile. Burn that ghost from the sky." The fleet obeyed without question. Hundreds of warships turned as one, locking their weapons on the dark figure floating ahead. Energy flooded the void. For a moment, the galaxy glowed like a newborn sun. The Leviathan did not move. It simply watched. And when the Dominion's fire finally reached it, the result was the same. The void swallowed every trace. The Terran ship seemed to drink energy. Shields adapted, hull shimmered, gravity bent in its favor. Dominion power met something beyond logic. Then the Leviathan's voice returned, low and clear through the open comms. "Dominion fleet, cease fire! You are outmatched." The words echoed through every ship, translated instantly across thousands of bridges. But what chilled them most was the tone. Calm, controlled, not proud, not arrogant, almost tired. On board the Leviathan, Captain Elias Ward stood with his hands clasped behind his back, staring at the holographic display of the Dominion formation. His uniform bore no medals, only a small silver insignia shaped like Earth. The crew around him moved with quiet discipline. There was no panic, no shouting, just perfect coordination. "Enemy fleet composition?" Elias asked. 740 ships, sir." replied his tactical officer, Lieutenant Imani. "They're cycling heavy weapons. Thermal readings off the charts." "Good," Elias said softly. "We need to remind them why humanity left the stars alone." He turned toward the main viewport. The Dominion's massive ships looked like mountains compared to the Leviathan, but Elias knew size meant nothing. Humanity's old fleets were not built for war. They were built to end it. "Arm the kinetic rails," he ordered. "Target the Admiral's flagship." Imani hesitated. "Sir, that's a populated vessel." Elias nodded once. "Then we show mercy. Aim near the bow." They need to understand, not vanish. Moments later, the Leviathan's hull rumbled. Deep within, old Terran technology awoke. Rail systems built with forgotten science, combining magnetic fields with gravitic compression. Energy built to impossible levels, forming a soundless storm. Then it fired a single projectile. A sliver of metal smaller than a car left the Leviathan at 1/10 the speed of light. It hit the Vakon's Wrath's forward hull, and the world turned white. The Dominion flagship spun, shields collapsing instantly. The impact didn't destroy. It crippled. Systems fried, decks shattered, soldiers thrown to the ground. On the bridge, Carex clung to the railing as alarms howled. What was that? Drav screamed. Carex stared at the damage report. That was a warning. Outside, the Leviathan moved again, slow, silent, deliberate. Its every step through space felt like the march of inevitability. Within the Dominion fleet, panic began to spread. Captains shouted across open channels, "Our weapons are useless." "No, shields can't hold? Retreat!" But no retreat order came. Carex stood tall, rage burning through his fear. No retreat. "I will not be remembered as the Admiral who ran." He turned to his crew. "Signal the entire fleet. Converge on the Terran ship. Surround it. Crush it." The Dominion obeyed. Hundreds of warships began forming a ring, closing in from all sides. It was a tactic that had ended countless enemies, a net of destruction no one could escape. On board the Leviathan, Elias watched them move. His eyes softened, almost with sorrow. "They still think in 2 dimensions, he murmured. "So predictable." He raised his hand. "Initiate spatial drift." The Leviathan shimmered. Space folded, twisted, and in less than a blink it vanished, reappearing behind the Dominion formation. Before they could turn, it unleashed a pulse that rippled through every ship. Dominion engines shut down. Shields collapsed. Every control flickered to black. The fleet hung dead in space, silent, powerless. "Impossible," Carex whispered. "What kind of power is this?" On the Leviathan's bridge, Imani spoke quietly. "Admiral's ship still operational, sir." "They're hailing us," Elias nodded. "Put him through." Carex's face appeared pale with disbelief. "Who are you?" he demanded. "What kind of weapon is that ship?" Elias studied him for a long time before answering. "We are Terrans. The ones you thought were gone." Carex glared. "Humanity destroyed itself long ago." Elias's gaze hardened. "No, we left. Because the galaxy needed to forget us." Carex frowned. "Forget you, why?" Elias took a slow breath. "Because when humanity fights, the stars remember. The connection cut." Outside, the Leviathan's weapon ports began to glow once more, bright and cold. A single command pulsed across the Terran systems, not of hate, not of vengeance, but of finality, Elias whispered. For those who couldn't defend themselves, the Leviathan's next shot split the heavens. The Dominion's surrounding ships broke apart, scattering into silence. Yet again, the Leviathan did not pursue. It only hovered, its presence alone enough to paralyze the survivors. Admiral Carex fell to his knees as the remains of his fleet drifted in defeat. For the first time, he understood what the galaxy once feared. Humanity was not just another species. It was a force, a lesson. And now that force had returned, the Dominion would never forget the name Leviathan. The destruction of the Dominion's front line sent ripples through the galaxy. Empires that once bowed before the Dominion now whispered in fear. Unknown signals filled communication networks. Panic, disbelief, speculation. Some said it was an illusion. Others believed the ancient ghosts of humanity had returned to reclaim the stars. Admiral Carex, still aboard his damaged flagship, refused to believe in ghosts. His pride burned too fiercely for that. His body ached from the blast. His ship groaned from the wounds of the Leviathan's strike, but his will remained unbroken. He looked at the holographic display, half his fleet gone, the rest scattered. His jaw clenched as he stared at the distant, silent Terran ship hovering in the void. "Admiral," Commander Drav said weakly, "half of our systems are offline." "We cannot fight," Carex's voice came out rough. "We do not need to fight. We only need to call." He pressed a command key. The Dominion's deep relay network awakened, a chain of beacons stretching across hundreds of light years. The distress signal marked Omega priority meant only one thing. Every available Dominion fleet, every reserve, every automated shipyard would receive the same order: total mobilization. Within hours, the black of space began to fill again. One by one, warp fissures opened, massive warships, carriers and dreadnoughts flooding into the system like an endless tide. The Dominion Armada had returned, larger than anything seen in generations. Carex stood tall once more as his tactical screens lit up with new contacts. "Now," he said, his voice regaining its edge, "we will show these Terrans what true power is." But far from them, on the bridge of the Leviathan, Captain Elias Ward watched it all with quiet eyes. His crew moved efficiently around him, their faces calm but heavy with understanding. "They're calling everything they have, sir," said Lieutenant Imani. "Hundreds of ships incoming, maybe thousands. They'll surround us within minutes." Elias nodded. "Let them." He turned toward the viewing glass. "We've seen worse." His words carried a weight his younger officers didn't fully understand. They hadn't lived through the fall of Earth or the wars of extinction when humanity fought the universe itself to survive. They hadn't seen the Terran fleets burning through black holes and neutron storms just to defend a home that no longer existed. Elias had. He had watched humanity rise, burn and vanish, but the Leviathan was built from that legacy. Its mission wasn't conquest. It was remembrance. The first wave of Dominion ships arrived in firing formation. Carex's voice echoed through every comm channel in the system. "This is Admiral Carex of the Dominion. You stand against the rulers of 1,000 worlds. You will surrender or be erased." Elias looked down at his console. His fingers hovered over a switch labeled Protocol Echo. "They always say the same words," he murmured. "They never learn." He opened a direct channel. "Dominion Fleet. Humanity once offered peace. You answered with conquest. We will not kneel." Then he closed the link and gave a single order. "Activate the veil." The Leviathan's surface began to shimmer again, but this time it wasn't invisibility. A massive sphere of refracted light expanded outward, swallowing everything within range. Dominion sensors went blind. Their targeting systems collapsed. From the outside, the Leviathan vanished into a storm of bending light. "Where did it go?" Carex demanded. "Find it!" But it was already too late. When the Dominion fleet fired blindly into the distortion field, their beams curved, folding through twisted gravity until they struck their own ships. Explosions rippled through the formation as the Dominion unknowingly destroyed itself. Inside the Leviathan, the crew felt the ship tremble as Elias's voice echoed softly through the bridge. "I warned them." Lieutenant Imani looked at him, her voice small. "Sir, they're killing themselves." Elias's expression didn't change. "That's what arrogance does." The veil field expanded further. Dozens of Dominion ships lost their engines and drifted helplessly. The once perfect formation of their armada dissolved into chaos, but even through the confusion, one transmission broke through the noise. A coded Dominion frequency Elias recognized from the old wars. It was a request for truce. Carex's voice came through, quieter now, hoarse and strained. "The Terran, what do you want?" Elias turned toward the comm unit, his eyes cold. "Justice. For the worlds you burned, for the people you enslaved." Carex clenched his teeth. "Then take it. But know this. Even if you destroy us, the galaxy will never bow to you again." Elias's reply was calm. "We are not here to rule. We came because you forgot what mercy looked like." For a moment the Dominion Admiral said nothing. Then his tone softened, filled with something rare, shame. "You fight with a power beyond reason. If this is mercy, then what is your wrath?" Elias looked out into the distorted stars. His voice was almost a whisper. "You do not want to know." He deactivated the veil. The distortion faded, revealing the shattered Dominion fleet, crippled, scattered, silent. The Leviathan's guns stayed cold. Not one shot was fired during the last minute of battle. Elias turned to his crew. "Signal them. Allow survivors to retreat. We are not their destroyers." Imani hesitated. "Sir, if we let them go, they will rebuild." Elias's voice was steady. "Then they will remember." The transmission went out, a single message across every Dominion frequency. "The Terrans do not seek war. Do not seek them." And with that, the Leviathan shifted its engines, bending light once more. The stars warped, and in a silent flash, the Terran Battleship vanished from the system, leaving only wreckage and whispers behind. On the crippled flagship, Carex watched as his screens faded to static. His empire, once unchallenged, had been humbled by a single ship. He leaned against the cracked console and spoke softly to no one in particular. "They could have ended us." "And they didn't," Commander Drav nodded weakly. "Why, Admiral?" Carex's gaze drifted toward the distant starlight. "Because they are human," he said quietly. "And humanity does not conquer. It reminds." In the silence that followed, the Dominion fleet began to retreat. Across the galaxy, stories of the Leviathan spread like wildfire. Stories of a ship that defied gods and humbled empires. Some called it myth. Others called it prophecy, but every empire that heard the name whispered the same words with trembling voices. "If humanity has truly returned, the age of the Dominion is over." Long after the battle ended, the silence of the void stretched across the ruined system. Burnt hulls drifted like bones in a graveyard of stars. Fires glowed dimly within broken ships, slowly fading into the endless dark. No voices spoke, no commands echoed, only the quiet hum of dying engines and the whisper of debris brushing through space remained. The Dominion had fallen silent for the first time in its long and violent history. On the bridge of the shattered flagship Varkon's Wrath, Admiral Carex stood among the wreckage of his command. Smoke curled through the broken panels. Crew members lay injured, tending to each other with trembling hands. The once golden glow of Dominion control was now replaced by a flickering red haze. He stared out of the cracked viewport at the place where the Leviathan had vanished. There was no light there now, no trace of movement, just the ghost of what had been. "They let us live," Commander Drav said quietly behind him. His voice carried disbelief and fear. "Why?" Carex did not turn. His expression was unreadable, a blend of pride and something else, something he had never allowed himself to feel. "Because they wanted us to see," he said slowly, "to understand what power without cruelty looks like." Drav frowned. "Mercy?" Carex's silver eyes reflected the dead stars. "No, memory. They wanted us to remember who they are." He closed his eyes for a moment. In his mind, he could still hear the Terran captain's voice, calm, precise and patient, like someone who had already seen every possible future and chosen the one that hurt the least. Meanwhile, far beyond the Dominion borders, the news of the battle spread faster than light. Transmission fragments replayed across the galaxy, the Terrans' warning, the image of a single human ship standing against 1,000. The moment the Leviathan disappeared into nothing on the planet Corthus, miners stopped their drills to listen to the broadcasts in silence. On Velth Prime, an empire known for enslaving weaker races suddenly cancelled its wars. Across 1,000 worlds, the message was the same. Humanity had returned, and they had done the impossible. But somewhere deep within the void, unseen by any sensor or telescope, the Leviathan still drifted. Its hull bore scars that light could not touch, its systems humming with quiet power. Inside the ship, the crew worked without a word. There was no celebration, no pride, only silence. Captain Elias Ward stood at the main viewport, hands folded behind his back. The stars reflected in his eyes, not as a conqueror's vision, but as a man carrying the weight of an ancient promise. "Status report," he said softly. "All systems nominal, Captain," Lieutenant Imani replied. "The Dominion fleets are in retreat. No pursuit detected." "Good," Elias said. "Let them heal from what they've seen." Imani hesitated, then asked, "Sir, what if they come again?" Elias's gaze remained on the stars. "Then we will remind them again." He walked to the central console, where a small holographic globe of Earth rotated slowly, the blue oceans and green continents glowing faintly. It wasn't the real Earth anymore. The real one had been gone for centuries, but to Elias and his crew, it wasn't a memory of land. It was a symbol of everything humanity once stood for: survival, compassion, defiance. A younger officer approached hesitantly. "Captain, may I ask something?" Elias nodded. "Why did we spare them? After what they've done, after the worlds they burned?" For a long moment, Elias said nothing. Then he spoke, his voice low and steady. "Because destruction is easy. Mercy takes strength. The old Terrans built this ship not to conquer, but to remember who we were before we lost ourselves." He looked at the image of Earth again. "Our ancestors made a vow before the great departure that humanity would never again fight for pride, but only for purpose. Today, we kept that vow." The young officer looked down. "Do you think the galaxy will believe it?" Elias gave a faint smile. "They will not need to believe. They will remember." The Leviathan's engines hummed softly as the ship turned, aligning with a distant star system. Its motion was slow, deliberate, almost like a shadow gliding through eternity. Far away, the Dominion began to rebuild. But things were no longer the same. Entire sectors refused to obey Carrick's commands. Old allies withdrew from his rule. The Dominion's image of invincibility had been shattered, replaced by a question whispered on every world: what happens when the Terrans return in full? Admiral Carrick spent his nights watching the stars from the wrecked observation deck. The arrogance that had once filled him was gone. In its place was a quiet respect, not admiration, but awareness. He now knew what kind of beings humanity had been. Not gods, not monsters, just something the galaxy had forgotten how to be. Truly alive. He spoke softly to the darkness, as though addressing the vanished Leviathan. "You could have destroyed us," he murmured. "But you didn't. You chose the harder path." He paused. "Perhaps that is why the galaxy once feared you." A faint transmission suddenly flickered across the Dominion network. An automated broadcast that seemed to appear from nowhere. It repeated a single sentence, over and over, in a language older than most worlds still spoke. "Humanity does not vanish. It waits." When Carrick heard it, he closed his eyes. Somewhere deep inside, he understood that this was not a threat. It was a warning and a promise. Back on the Leviathan, Elias stood alone in the quiet bridge. His reflection shimmered in the glass as the stars drifted past. He whispered to himself, not as a soldier, but as a man remembering a long-lost home. "Earth sleeps," he said softly, "but her children still walk the stars." The Leviathan's lights dimmed as it vanished once more into the endless dark, its engines leaving only a faint echo through subspace, a heartbeat in the silence, and across the galaxy. The message spread in every shadowed corner, in every frightened whisper, in every prayer spoken beneath alien skies. The Terrans are watching. The Terrans are waiting. And one day they will return again.